there's some initial setup that you have to do before you start to use Caseload. And to do that initial setup, go to the Setup module, then go to Options, System Config, and then come all the way down here to Caseloads. So the setup really is around codes and how you want to treat movements between caseloads. So we start with a section for clinical entries. So this allows you to, when you add somebody to a caseload, an entry is made into that patient's record saying they've been added to a caseload, and the system is asking you which SNOMED code or local code you want to use to specify that. Same for remove caseload, same for internal referrals. So here I've got to look up to SNOMED, and if I go add to caseload, I can choose my local code for added to caseload. So every time I add somebody to a caseload, that code will be put in the patient record. Similarly, with removing somebody from a caseload, we then have a checkbox to say whether it's discretionary or not. And if you tick that box, it will be at the option of the user when someone is added or removed from a caseload. If you leave that box unticked, then every time you add or remove somebody from a caseload, an entry will go in their clinical record. It's actually quite useful to have that entry made, because then it's easy to report on caseload movements, how many people have been added to caseloads, how many people have been removed from caseloads. So I would recommend that you have those codes in there so that when things are done, it is actually recorded in the clinical record. We then have a section for when we're moving people around for referrals. Some organisations treat a referral from, say, home care service to daycare service as a whole new referral, and that's how they do their reporting. Other organisations treat it as an internal referral. So you're given the choice as to whether you want to make it a new referral or an internal referral, or do nothing at all. Don't actually record anything at all, and just leave it as it is. Again, you get a discretionary tick box to see whether you want to absolutely make that entry or not. If you do make an entry for an internal referral, then again, we can specify a code that we want to use on the record in order to record that and specify it. The next thing we have is the caseload to put new referrals onto. So when a new referral is added to Crosscare, it can be put automatically onto a specific caseload so that it can be processed or triaged from there. Now, I would put that on my team caseload for the MDT assessment meeting. So whenever I add a new referral, it goes on the list for the MDT team to assess what we want to do with it. And then the last thing we can specify is for each user, how many caseloads do we want to display as a standard. So I'm going to say 4. There are then, on a separate tab, some actions that you can turn on, turn off. So do you want to automatically notify the caseload owner by email when something happens to that caseload? Do you want to automatically populate open this service when adding and transferring? So if you move someone to daycare, a daycare caseload, you can open a service for daycare against the referral. Similarly, exactly the same thing for close a service. So if someone's removed from a caseload, you can also close the service. Do you automatically want to check if this is the only open service? Then close the entire referral. So if the patient only has one service open and you remove them from that service caseload, the system can automatically close the referral for you as well. Do you want to update caseloads for associated professionals? And do you also want to make the reason for adding to a caseload mandatory, the reason for removing from a caseload mandatory, and the reason for transferring from a caseload mandatory? And think about how you want your system to be structured, think about how much you want the system to do, and tick these boxes accordingly. Once you're finished, hit save. The There are then some other options we need to do in terms of allowing access to caseloads for people, but we'll cover those in a different lesson.